Hi, everyone. Welcome into episode 16 of the Best Bell Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Bradley Stalder. You can follow me at FF Stalder on Twitter. You can also give some likes and subscription to the Best Bell Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure you give the like and subscribe. I'll also be posting this on the audio. I have been waiting for some time to get a Drafters fantasy team up and going. So I'm excited. We're going to get started. I am ready to draft. Reminder for those new to Drafters Fantasy, you can use code BESTBELL, one word, BESTBELL, for a $10 first-time deposit bonus on Drafters if, in fact, you are drafting and depositing for the first time. Happy to be with you, all of you, tonight. Thanks for stopping in. And it looks like in the next 30 seconds, I'm going to be kicking off from the one spot. And that's pretty exciting. I haven't had one spot drafts here. So let me send out to the masses this draft so that maybe we can get Okay, it is my pick, and for drafters, it is a 30-second pick. The reality is when you're having drafts like this in this tournament and you get the 101, your exposure needs to be at Jonathan Taylor. So Jonathan Taylor is the no-brainer 101. That's where you're going to get Jonathan Taylor. And I know that with this team roster, right, it's going to be a start 3 wide receiver. So yes, I did start with running back, but that's going to be my exposure here at this point. I needed to take Jonathan Taylor. There's no way that you're going to get Jonathan Taylor at 2 or 3 or etc. So the only exposure you're realistically going to get is at the 101. It just makes sense for you to be getting Jonathan Taylor 101 here. But the 102, Cooper Kupp is a good play. I think that he's still going to be a top 2 wide receiver next year. Looking at his spike weeks, 54% of his weeks were as a wide receiver 6 or so or higher. And that's calculated from how many weeks percentile adjusted rate that Cooper Kupp scores 24.7 PPR fantasy points. And Drafters Fantasy is in PPR scoring. So that is good. Jonathan Taylor is going to be the 101. I've seen Cooper Kupp go at the 102. I've seen Justin Jefferson go at the 102. Austin Eckler, I haven't seen go there, but Christian McCaffrey oftentimes goes at the 102. And it gets a little wonky. It goes wherever the draft takes you. But at the 102, I've taken Justin Jefferson before, and I've seen Jamar Chase even go there from time to time. We see Travis Kelce go off very early. That is interesting to me. And we do not need like the week 17 matchups for this Drafters Fantasy tournament because this tournament is a season-long tournament. It's weeks 1 through 17. So a couple things to keep in mind. Rookies, a little undervalued relative to the Best Ball Mania 3. PPR plays like Deontay Johnson, also better values in this draft than in Best Ball Mania 3, where it's half PPR, and especially for Deontay Johnson, who has questionable quarterback play coming into 2022. Yes, he had it last year, but Big Ben and him, they had chemistry for years, whereas Kenny Pickett or Mitchell Trubisky are going to be throwing to Deontay, George Pickens, Chase Claypool is now being talked about moving into the slot. That's interesting to me. But there are 2 other players we talked about having chemistry. Anthony Miller is actually on this team, and his connection to Mitchell Trubisky is something that we will be watching in training camp. And the other part is I mentioned that rookies will be faded, but in the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament, like the likes of a Calvin Austin are really interesting because the Pittsburgh Steelers have a good matchup week 17. And if Calvin Austin breaks one off later on in the season, that'll look pretty good. I have 4 picks left until mine, and I see Alvin Kamara is there, Mike Evans, Javonte Williams. I usually don't like starting with two running backs, but I'll let the value come to me. I'm taking a look at who still is left. Kamara, Evans. I have Alvin Kamara rated as the 15th overall player, so I'd be probably happy to take him there as a value. Mike Evans, I have him at 19 or 20, a percentile adjusted rate. And probably Evans, if he's there, I'd like to take him because he's a wide receiver and fit the build, but also because for a majority of the season, like Mike Evans is going to be the number one pass catcher on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. In drafters fantasy, remember, this is a weeks 1 through 17. So as a result, your later on in the season doesn't matter as much relative to the beginning of the season. Like the beginning of the season matters a lot. So it's my pick here. I see Tyreek Hill, Nick Chubb. Looking at Tyreek Hill, I have him at 21 and 19, Chubb at 22, and I'm getting down to 14 seconds. I should make my pick, and it's going to be Tyreek Hill. So we're going to take Tyreek Hill at this spot. Now it's whatever value. So the ADP, Nick Chubb is 25.6, AJ Brown 26. Okay. And the temptation here is to take AJ Brown, and I think I will, just to make sure I get those wide receiver spots filled. I'm disappointed that Mike Evans didn't come back to me. I'd prefer to have Evans. I still think AJ Brown is a smash. He's going to command a target share. I know it's a run first offense, but he's the type of player that can take one to the house. And if the offense is failing with Jalen Hurts running or Miles Sanders running, it's not going to be like Ryan Tannehill, where they're going to just keep force feeding Derrick Henry. That's not going to happen. I am not a fan of that view. I'd rather have the board view. So there we go. So that's what I'm thinking about AJ Brown. It's really not too much of a discount in best ball. AJ Brown is certainly one of those win rate type of players. 42.2% wide receiver win rate over the last 3 years. And I define wide receiver win rate as the rate at which a wide receiver scores 15 and a half PPR fantasy points or more. And the reason why I chose 15 and a half is looking at these drafters' drafts of the people who won the tournaments last year. What did it take for their flex position to make their flex position? How many points? And 15 and a half is about the threshold that you want to be hitting for your flex positions. The bare minimum, the absolute minimum. So I'm happy to get Tyreek Hill, who over the last 3 years, 58%. And he's shifting teams, but you know that Miami Dolphins offense is going to be manufacturing him touches in space to get him the ball, scoring touchdowns, or letting Tua hit him on slants. That's the thing, is getting him in space. So I'm not like super worried about that. Tua is pretty accurate down the field. He'll take his shots. He'll calculate his shot. This will also set me up I don't need to stack with Jalen Hurts, but it also sets me up pretty well to get Jalen Hurts, who I have valued pretty high in this draft. Jalen Hurts' quarterback win rate was about the same as Josh Allen's. And I define quarterback win rate as the rate at which a quarterback scores at least 22 fantasy points. Why 22? Once again, looking at these winning rosters, these tournament winning rosters, what is the probability that this particular player hit those thresholds that the winning teams, like, it's almost reverse engineering. What are the winning teams getting from each of their starting spots so that they're in contention? And you want to be targeting those players almost as a reverse engineer, as I mentioned. And each of those players have historical data to suggest that this is within the range of outcomes or this is not. So Josh Allen, 46.7% win rate over the last 3 years. And then Jalen Hurts over the last couple of years, yes, only 26.1% over the last 2 years, but 45.5% last year. So very interesting here. We do see Josh Allen go off the board in round 3. That is not surprising. Josh Allen's ADP, at least a couple weeks ago, was 29. So that fits the bill there at 31 now. He's dropped just a tad. There are some players here that Yeah, I am out on Zeke at ADP 40 at this point. He was in the 5th round in some drafts, and I'm not willing to take him at ADP 40.6. He is going to be usable. I thought he was a great value in the middle of 5th round, but as ADP 40.6, that's not going to happen. There is a player here that I'm hoping will make it back to me, but I don't see a lot of wide receivers. It's getting pretty wide receiver thin, and I'm not interested, for instance, in Jerry Jeudy because I don't think he's particularly good or has the upside that you want. I've been harping on this all season. If you want to check out some of the videos that I've been doing, definitely check it out. Yeah. So let me try a different thing here. Okay. Cool beans. Yeah, maybe we'll do that instead. Okay. Excellent. So once again, if you're just jumping into drafters, oh yes, the running back is there, Travis Etienne. I'm going to draft Etienne. Boom, he is my go-to in the end of the 4th round, beginning of the 5th round. And I don't have a lot of stackable pieces, so I'm looking at the wide receiver that I do believe in, and that is Cortland Sutton. I think that Cortland Sutton is the wide receiver who's going to smash for the Denver Broncos offense. His average depth of target is large. He's a big-bodied wide receiver. He can catch the touchdowns that Russell Wilson trusts him with. You can think of him almost as a DK Metcalf type of player, as well as Jerry Jeudy paralleled to Tyler Lockett. But I'm not convinced that Jeudy is as good as Lockett or will have that type of chemistry, which is fine. I haven't seen the upside from Jerry Jeudy that you have seen from Cortland Sutton. So to give another example, Jerry Jeudy's 3-year win rate, wide receiver win rate, 7.5%. As for Cortland Sutton, so I said 7.5%. Cortland Sutton's 3-year win rate, 26.3%. We're talking almost 4x the amount of times over the last couple years. Judy's only played 2 years, but in that sampling, going back 2 years, 3 years, Cortland Sutton, his rate is 4x higher with the same quarterback play, with all the same stuff, with all the same defenses. I know you're thinking to yourself, well, but Jeudy was out for a couple weeks and he didn't play very well. Look who steps up, as the alpha. It's Cortland Sutton. He's built that way, built to be different. This also sets me up for being able to take a player like Russell Wilson later on in the draft when he comes to me. I'm fine with taking Russell Wilson in these types of formats, these types of drafts. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this is a start 3 wide receiver draft. So it's a 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and a flex. And you want to fill your flex with wide receivers. That's the thing, because the wide receivers tend to have much more variance, and in that variance, they tend to score higher. In fact, if you look at the average of the top 12 running backs versus the top 12 wide receivers week to week over the course of a season, it's pretty significantly different. It's at least a 1.5 different. Yeah, there we go. I've been waiting for 90 minutes plus to get into this draft room. I've been really excited about being in here, and it's finally happening that I'm drafting on drafters. It's been far too long. And once again, if you want to get in on drafting on drafters and you haven't already, use promo code BESTBELL, BESTBELL, for a $10 first time deposit bonus as you deposit at least $10. And they've got this $20, the Drafters Million NFL BestBall Championship that I'm drafting in right now. And this has 2x the chance that you will win money back. It's pretty good in that sense, but also not only the money back, you'll be able to, it's $20, and if you get your money back, it's also $20 more. So if you get your money back, not only are you getting it back, but $20 more. Whereas if you, for the Best Ball Mania 3 tournament, the difference is that it's $25 entry. And if you get the first tier of winners only get $40 back. So it's a $15, it's 60%, plus 60% of what you had entered. I like drafting on Best Ball Mania 3. I like drafting on drafters like I am tonight, but there are differences in how the tournaments are set up. Okay, so we started to see a little bit of a quarterback run. Mahomes, Jackson, Herbert, Murray, Burrow. And it looks, I'll have my choice of Jalen Hurts or Russell Wilson probably will be much later. I don't think I'll get Wilson, though, is the thing. So I'd like to get Hurts if he's here. If not, then there may be other players that I'd be interested in. But I want to get these stack pieces in if I can. Jalen Hurts does go off. So maybe, yeah, let's take a look at some of the players here. I am going to draft Wilson probably with the second pick here, maybe the first pick, just to buy myself some more time. Russ, we're going to take Russ to do the stacking just because I'm at the turn. You have to go there, but I still feel he's in the same tier as Brady and Dak Prescott, although I do like Brady and Prescott solo. The Drake London's probably going to command a pretty significant target share to get started. And since I lost out on the Philadelphia stack, I guess I'm not going to be able to get it. It's okay. It would make sense if the Jalen Hurts drafter went with Devonta Smith at this spot. Nevertheless, and it happens. So there we go. So I've got 4 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a quarterback, and this is a 20-round draft, 30-second timer, and I'm really excited to see where the draft takes me. I want value in the drafts. I want some stackable pieces in the draft. I want 9 or 10 wide receivers because that's where the variance happens. So if you could possibly be starting 4 wide receivers in your 3 wide receiver spots and your flex spot. I want to be filling that with as much high upside as I can. And then I've got Taylor. I'm a big believer in ETN. To get him in the 4th, beginning of the 5th is gold for me. And then I'll just take stabs at wide receivers. There was an interesting study done by, I think it was TJ Hernandez of the Best Mania 2 data. And what he found was there were a lot of 4 tight end builds, at least a higher rates than you would expect. And I suspect that that's because in a half PPR, touchdowns are a lot more valuable. And the percentage of the points that are being scored by the tight ends that make your best ball lineups, especially the teams that punt tight end, the chance that one of those 4 is scoring a touchdown is going to be pretty high. And then they're getting a half point for the catch and however many points for the yards. I think those more dart throw tight end builds make more sense in a half PPR build or in a half PPR tournament like the Best Ball Mania 3. Compare that to here in drafters where it's full PPR. And if you're not getting a tight end that's commanding a pretty significant target share, best of luck. So Dalton Schultz going off, that was unfortunate. I wasn't willing to go with TJ Hawkinson, even though Hawkinson, his tight end win rate last year was pretty high. In fact, let me do the sort. And Hawkinson was 6th, only behind Dalton Schultz, Dawson Knox, Gronk, Andrews, and Kelsey. So there you go. But after him, Kittle, Gesicki, Waller, Henry, Goddard. And we talk all the time about how tight end falls off. Tight end falls off significantly. And it did last year as well. Last year, the 2021 year tight end win rate for the number 1 tight end, that was Travis Kelsey. He had the higher win rate. 62.5% of his weeks were 15.5 or 16 point. I think it's 16.5 is the threshold that I have for a tight end win week, because the average, the top 12 tight ends week to week, the average of those, so about tight end 6, is about 16.5 PPR fantasy points. So 62.5% of the time, Travis Kelsey got that. 44.8% was Mark Andrews. 42.1 Gronk. Dawson Knox, 28.4 Dalton Schultz finishes at 5 at 27%. If you're getting Kelsey, you're getting a significant best ball edge, which is why if I'm at the 10, 11, 12, I'm smashing a lot of Kelsey, at that turn. Kelsey, and then for me, Mixon. Mixon is a big pick for me at these spots. I'm 6 away, and I'm looking at who might be coming up to me. Garrett Wilson has some ambiguity. I'm not really interested in running back here. Maybe Olave. Maybe I double tap the rookie wide receivers just to get more variance. I did mention the purpose of drafting the rookies in the Best Ball Mania 3 tournaments is the thought that over the course of the year, the rookies will get you to the promised land. They'll get you in the tournaments. You hope that they'll be spiking during that time. But with the ambiguity of the wide receivers here, I just want players that are after ADP or a good value. And there's uncertainty about what the projections are for like a Garrett Wilson with Elijah Moore there and with Corey Davis there and Braxton Berrios. So can Garrett Wilson carve out a significant role? And the answer will be, I don't know if it's going to work for my team because he just went off. So Olave is going to be a consideration here. Dawson Knox will not be, but man, Marquez Valdes-Scantling goes off. He's an interesting piece here. Olave, I will take in round 8. And then looking at who else I would take. Kareem Hunt. I think that with Kareem Hunt, I've been smashing him in this round 9 spot, mostly because he's a 7th round value for me. He could be cut. He's extremely talented. His spike weeks were the same as Nick Chubb's last year. Like the rate at which he spiked, same rate as Nick Chubb in full PPR. So if he goes to somewhere else, the likelihood that he'll have a full role, that's pretty high. And there was recent news that no teams offered a tender for D'Ernest Johnson, which means that Kareem Hunt's either going to get cut or he's going to get traded. Either way, he's probably not going to end up on the Browns, which is a good thing for your fantasy teams. And I like having him as my running back 3. I'll probably only draft 2 or 3 more running backs, but I have my 5 wide receivers. I have my quarterback. Now I'm going to let hopefully some tight end value come to me here in the middle rounds on tight ends that are more PPR based tight ends. So I stayed away from Dawson Knox because he was more touchdown dependent. Dawson Knox, a better pick in your Best Ball Mania 3s because he's more touchdown driven. His points are more touchdown driven. Compare that to like a Zach Ertz coming up. If Zach Ertz somehow makes it back to me, I would be interested in Zach Ertz, but there isn't really a lot of tight ends coming back, except maybe I'll take a shot at Gronk here. Okay. Cool beans. Of course, if you're watching and you want to just pop in, add some comments on YouTube, I'd love to chat with you about strategy, about my player takes, construction, the upside particular players. I've been posting some upside studies recently, so check out the YouTube channel there. In particular, I have in episode 3, I have teams to target and avoid for best ball tournaments. Episode 4 was upside of examination of wide receivers, along with episode 8. So those wide receivers who change teams, I looked at what upside they bring to their new team and their outlook, how their upside may be. I also identified some avoids in the first 10 rounds of your best ball drafts. So check that out. That's episode 6. And then episode 10, I identified round by round targets for the first 10 rounds of your drafts. And then episode 14, I identified some regression candidates for wide receiver, both wide receivers that I thought would improve their upside. That wide receiver 1 week, I said before at the beginning of the podcast that I think wide receiver 1s should be getting 24.7 fantasy points. That's what you want from that wide receiver 1 spot, at least if you're a winning team. You don't want to be banking on getting 3 wide receiver 2s. You want one of them to be spiking, which is why in these types of drafts, in these drafters fantasy drafts, you want one or two of those spike type of players like a Tyreek Hill or an AJ Brown that can access some of the top ceilings for your teams. So looking here, Gronk is an interesting pick here at 123. Rondell Moore has fallen a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if that player gets scooped up. I am avoiding Michael Gallup. He is a strong avoid for me in the 10th round of drafts, especially because this is one of the first players off your bench that you're banking on, and he's going to start the season on the pup. It's not going to be good. Christian Watson is interesting, but I've already taken 2 rookie wide receivers in the first 8 rounds. I don't know how I feel about that. I'd rather take a shot on a Rob Gronkowski, okay, as my first tight end, and then just punt tight end the rest of the way. We know that Gronk is one of those elite tight ends. And then looking at the rest of the picks, Alexander Madison is almost he's really hard to pass up in these drafts because I have Madison. Okay, so his ADP, Madison's ADP was 120 something. Okay, I picked him at 121, and looking at Madison, his value, I have him at about 110 or so. The reality is Dalvin Cook's situation is interesting to me. I don't know what's going to come of the domestic abuse concerns that came up around November. That's still ambiguous. The Vikings have moved toward a more pass-heavy approach with bringing in the the offensive coordinator from the Rams, whose passing rate neutral game scripts was very high. And then looking at Dalvin Cook's injury history, that's also a concern. And when Madison has played, we've seen him hit those spike weeks, right? Looking at what Madison's done over the last 3 years, it's no different. It's no different than Tony Pollard. They're at about a 12% running back win rate. But last year, because Dalvin Cook was hurt, 21% win rate for running back for Alexander Madison. And that is, once again, getting 15 and a half fantasy points or more. So I think Alexander Madison is my running back 4. That's fine. I'm going to need some more wide receivers. Okay. Yeah, but there are some real high upside wide receiver options later on here that I'm really interested in taking shots on. I'm also going to look to take another quarterback soon. Okay. Let me scroll down here. Okay. And nice. You can now hover over the other players and see what their builds are. So I'm a 1-4-5-1 build through 11 rounds. We see a 1-4-6-0 build, 1-2-7-1 build, 2-4-4-1, 1-5-4-1, 1-4-5-1, 2-3-5, 1-3-5-2. And so far, no one's gone for a third quarterback, which is good on y'all. Okay. And I see some of the upside wide receivers go off the board. That's not helpful. I really am interested in the DJ Charks and Devontae Parkers of the world. We'll see what other wide receivers come back to me. I'm not a fan of Dameon Pierce. He just went off in the 12th round, but I need to go off on Mikola Hardman. Mikola Hardman has proven over the last 3 years he is not a good fantasy option. Looking over the last 3 years, his 84th percentile weekly outcome ranges between 13 PPR points and 15 PPR points. It's very tightly knit. There's not a lot of variance there. You know what you're going to get with the spike week of Mikola Hardman, and it's not even going to be good enough to be a flex play. Like, it's just simply not good. Let me pull up some stats because Hardman. Okay. Mikola Hardman, his 3-year wide receiver win rate, less than 11%. That's not going to get it done when you're tied to the best quarterback in the NFL, or arguably the best quarterback in the NFL. As a Packers fan, I'll defer to Rodgers still being the most talented quarterback. That's just you can see the Bakhtiari jersey behind me there. But I'm going to want some wide receivers coming up here. I'm disappointed that there were 3 of the wide receivers I wanted to go off. And I've got Gronk, I've got Madison, but Corey Davis is a player that I want. I'm going to talk about Corey Davis shortly. And KJ Osborne seems to typically always overplay. He's not going to come back to me. So KJ Osborne and Corey Davis, New York Jets, Minnesota Vikings. I've got a little Minnesota correlation here. Denver stacking and looking at instead Corey Davis. Corey Davis's 3-year win rate, 22%. So it's double Mikola Hardman, and he's been on run-first offenses and a bad New York Jets team. And he still put that up. So his ADP was around 151. I took him a little bit early, like at 146, 147. Actually, that was at 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 144, about 6, 7 spots ahead of ADP, but that's fine for me. He offers upside that is going to make my best ball lineup from time to time, and I'm not too worried about his role. It's probably going to be him and Garrett Wilson on the outside with Elijah Moore on the inside, or maybe Corey Davis even moves into the slot a little bit, or maybe Garrett Wilson moves into the slot a little bit just to mix things up. Corey Davis is not going to lose like he gets a 22% target share. Worst case, it goes down to 18. Corey Davis, he's a good player, and he was just injured last year, which is why we're getting this discount on Davis. Okay. There are other reasons why we're getting the discount, but the primary reason is because of his injuries last year. All right. So looking through, I'm 13 rounds in, and I have a 1-4-7-1 build. I'm going to need some tight ends. I'm going to need a quarterback. I did not solidify those positions, but now I'm looking better because I've got my 7 wide receivers, lots of upside built into it, some of the floor built into it as well with Olave and Cortland Sutton. Like all 3, Hill, Brown, and Sutton can access wide receiver 1 weeks, and tying myself to the Denver offense with Sutton and Russell Wilson. That's something that I've been intentionally doing. When Sutton has come to me at about 80 ADP, like at 49, 50 in the early 5th round, I've been smashing him and smashing the draft button because Cortland Sutton is the touchdown maker. And he's also commanded a target share throughout his career, 20+%, pretty consistently. Okay. Yeah, I'm upset that Njoku went off there. It's just been interesting. The ends will typically reach, right? Because they know that they're not going to pick for another 22 picks or so. Getting David Njoku there was a nice pick by the 12 spot, Omar Gutierrez. Yeah. So I'm 7 spots away. I do have some needs to fill. So we'll look at what players are available at those spots. But just to bring it back a little bit on the likes of Cortland Sutton. Last year, 18.9% target share, 15.8 in a very short season. Only 6 targets the entire in 2020 for Cortland Sutton. But in 2019, a 26.1% target share, and in his rookie year, a 15% target share, which is exactly what you want to see from your wide receivers. A 26.1% target share. I don't think he'll reach that again, but to be in the low 20s with Russ, that's what we saw from both DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett over the last few years. And then Corey Davis, as I mentioned, another player that's been underrated and probably not going to lose a ton of his target share. Last year, 18.2% target share for Corey Davis, 23.1 the previous year in Tennessee, 16.8 the year before that. 26.4 in 2018. So we've seen 2 of the 5 seasons for Corey Davis over 20%, and in fact, even his rookie year, 19%. So I think Corey Davis is undervalued going at 144th. Yeah, that's a wide receiver value you should be smashing there. Now, I do need some tight end help and I need quarterback help. I'm going to tie myself to Indy with Russell Wilson as my quarterback, Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor have that correlation. And then looking here, I'm also going to draft Alec Pierce to get myself a wide receiver stack there. I'm at 2, 4, 8, 1. We'll see what tight ends come back around. I'm not going to force a tight end if I don't like that value, because we know that there are going to be tight ends who get some spike weeks here and there. But at this point, it doesn't really matter. Looking at the tight end win rates last year, let me pull them up. Tight end win rate for 2021, it went down from, there were only 11. There were only 11 tight ends last year with at least a 10% tight end win rate. At this point, you're just taking shots in the dark. You're just taking players that you think are going to be involved in their respective teams. And you don't need to worry about like week 17 matchups. But if you were worrying about week 17 matchups, the likes of Logan Thomas are interesting. Washington has a good tight end matchup week 17, and the Denver Broncos Albert Okwuegbunam have an interesting matchup during the fantasy playoffs. So if you're in the Best Ball Mania 3 tournaments and you're not doing the drafters one, definitely consider those 2 later tight ends if you're completely punting the tight end position. Okay. So I've got some Indy stack and correlation going. I have some, let's see, Minnesota correlation with Osborne and Madison. And then Russell Wilson stack with Cortland Sutton, which I'm very happy about. Okay. We are now entering the last 5 rounds of the draft. And I sometimes leave these drafts with 3 quarterbacks. Sometimes I leave them with 2. I do like to get 3 tight ends, and especially with Rob Gronkowski, as my tight end, I just think he's undervalued. Let's look at where Gronk was drafted. He was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, the 10th, 11th tight end off the board. Look, Gronk is not going to be tight end 11. Gronk is either going to be tight end 4 or he's going to be a 0. And if he's a 0, then you're taking a 0 anyway at the tight end position with just waiting for it. Because you're not going to invest multiple middle round picks or a high end and a high end pick like a Pitts or a Waller or a Kittle and a Gronk. Like, it just doesn't make sense, especially in a non-tight end premium league or tournament like Drafters Fantasy. So that build doesn't make sense. So it's a gamble in round 10, but he has shown for years that he has the upside. That, look, the only other tight ends that can really access that type of upside, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce. That's it. That's it on a week-to-week basis. All the other tight ends had less than a 30% tight end win rate last year. And then looking at over the, I don't have it. I didn't pull it up. It's okay. We saw Hayden Hurst and Logan Thomas go off. That's disappointing. Let's just look at tight end. Let's see what tight ends are coming up. Austin Hooper is getting some love at OTAs. It's going to be a run for his offense. Jordan is very interesting. I love drafting Brevin. Mo Alley Cox is interesting. CJ Uzama, not as interesting. Cameron Brate. Now that might be a false or a good arbitrage to target later on. Cameron Brate along with Rob Gronkowski, because you're investing 2 picks, sure, but you know that the tight end position is going to get lots of love in the Tom Brady offense. And we've seen Cameron Brate be a top 10 tight end before. Like, he may not be able to access the ceiling that Gronk can. Tampa Bay is going to be a good offense. They're going to be in scoring position. And let's look at all just to see some values here. Brian Robinson is interesting to me, but yeah, let's do it. Brian Robinson. Okay, now I've got my 5 running backs. I've got 2 quarterbacks, 5 running backs, 8 wide receivers, and a tight end. Let's lock in Brevin Jordan. I love me some Brevin Jordan. I think that he'll improve as a player over the course of the season. He only started playing halfway through, and 40% of his games he had double-digit fantasy points in PPR. And I'll take that from a rookie tight end who now doesn't have the competition and has a quarterback who's now entering year 2 a little bit more confident. Yeah. So to bring it back to Cameron Brate and the targeting that I want to bring up, that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to involve the tight end. In fact, in 2016 and 2017, Cameron Brate was a top 10 PPR tight end. So it's been a while. That was with the emergence of OJ Howard afterwards, and then Rob Gronkowski over the last couple of years. Cameron Brate might be the pick later on for these best ball tournaments if you have Rob Gronkowski, and then just taking another tight end like a Brevin Jordan would be a nice pick. Okay, let's take a look at bye weeks, make sure I'm not getting screwed over on any bye weeks. I don't have any issues with Denver, and looking at my running back spots, Indy, Taylor, and Robinson have the same, but I'm pretty okay at those spots. I have 3 week 14 buys for my wide receivers, but none of them are my top 3 wide receivers. So that's a good thing. And then Gronk is week 11, Brevin Jordan's week 6. We are entering the last 3 rounds of the draft. Thanks everyone for tuning in and listening. You can follow me on Twitter at FFStalder. My name is Bradley, and I put out best ball content and other upside studies and different things on my Best Belt Fantasy YouTube channel. Make sure to check it out. Give a subscribe and like. Follow me on Twitter, and also listen to the audio versions. That's nice. I know some people like to put it on 3x and just listen through. I appreciate your listens and your follows and your subscriptions, all of that. It helps me put out this content. Make sure you're giving the 5-star ratings. That helps me put it out for free. It also makes my wife a little bit happier when I tell her that, oh yeah, good things are happening. It is what it is. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate your support. So let's take a look at some of the players who are starting to fall in this draft. Marlon Mack has fallen so far. Austin Hooper, Myles Gaskin, and Marcus Mariota and Hassan Haskins. Okay. So looking at, because of my build, I'm considering another tight end. I might consider another quarterback, and I do want a wide receiver here, at least 9 wide receivers. Okay, seeing if there are any interesting spike week players, and I'm going to add Cedric Wilson to the queue because Cedric Wilson, now this is something interesting. Cedric Wilson, where is my data here? Yes, so let's find Cedric Wilson. Cedric Wilson is one of the only wide receivers over the last, from 2019 to 2020 and 2020 to 2021, whose wide receiver 1 rates have increased each of the last 2 years. It's been pretty minimal, but looking at some of the spike weeks, you want players who have shown that they can, at some point, some way, they've done it before. So maybe it is going to be a Cedric Wilson pick here. If I can get there before. Where is it? Oh no, did I lose him? Oh no, I lost him and I autoed Myles Gaskin. No! I thought I selected him. Where did he go? Oh no. Oh, where did search Wilson? Oh, and it autoed me Jonnu Smith. No! Where is Cedric Wilson? Wait, did he get picked already? No, he got picked. I missed that? Oh, that's so terrible. Wow. Okay. Shoot. How did I miss that? I thought he was there. That's so bizarre. Okay. I guess I won't be going in between the in between the tabs. That's what caught me off guard. But let's look at what the damage did. I have a 2-6-8-3 build. I've got one more pick left to go. I'm gonna have to go wide receiver here. Yeah, so let's set a queue. Braxton Berrios. Let's pick another stackable piece from either Denver or Indy. Not much from Denver in the wide receiver realm. And now Indy as well. Paris Campbell. That's interesting. Ashton Doolin. Yeah, those are probably going to be among the wide receivers that I'm interested in taking shots on. Is Straken here? Mike Straken. There we go. I had some love for Mike Straken at the last offseason. Just 7th round pick, big bodied guy, but he just couldn't separate himself. Mostly a special teamer last year. Although he took off, a year because of the COVID pandemic, and I wonder if that played a role in a slow start for him. But he was making huge catches for the Colts. But I think that Carson Wentz was just not willing to throw it to him. Maybe Straken is the type of player that Matt Ryan would be interested in getting some extra love in. We will see, though. All right. Thanks, everyone, for jumping in to this fast draft with me on Drafters Fantasy. Really happy to be able to do this tonight. And yeah, make sure you check out the YouTube videos and all of the analysis that I've been putting out. I have some articles that I'll be working on for Fantasy Pros over the next month or so that I'm going to be releasing some players to target and fade per tournament. So there are a lot of different best ball tournaments that different sites are putting on, and I want to, throw out players that increase or decrease value in that particular tournament because of the league settings. So for instance, of course, tight end premium is going to be interesting in your FFPC best ball drafts, or in the drafters fantasy. You don't want to be taking into account the the week 17 games. You also care less about, or you care more about the injuries. You care more about the rookies. You want to make sure that you've got players, at least at the beginning of the season, to hold you off because it is cumulative points. So starting off with Michael Gallups and Chris Godwins are not as ideal for drafters, whereas they would be more interesting in tournaments like the Best Ball Mania 3s, and also keeping in mind the half versus full PPR differences. Okay. Because, for instance, drafters full PPR, but the Best Ball Mania 3 only half PPR. And this is a 20-round draft as well, whereas Best Ball Mania 3, 18 rounds. The FFPC drafts are 20 rounds generally. So we saw Paris Campbell go off. Got sniped to my last round pick. Okay. Looks like Ashton Doolin's going to be my pick unless something crazy happens. We're going to go all. Maybe not. Cameron Brate's just hanging out right there as my arbitrage for Gronk, but I need the extra wide receiver. Are there any other outrageous wide receiver values? Ikine. Okay. I talked myself into Ikine. Actually, Billy Muzio, if you're watching this, it's your fault. I went with Westbrook Ikine. All right. So just to do a recap here, I took Jonathan Taylor, 101, Tyreek Hill at the end of the second round, A.J. Brown at the beginning of the third round, Travis Etienne, Cortland Sutton. So through 5 rounds, I had 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs. And then Russell Wilson to stack with Cortland Sutton, Drake London, and Chris Olave, round 7 and 8. Kareem Hunt in round 9. That was pretty nice. Gronk in round 10, 120th. Alexander Madison, round 11. Corey Davis in round 12 and KJ Osborne, round 13. Matt Ryan in 14. Alec Pierce pairing him with Matt Ryan in round 15. Brian Robinson and Brevin Jordan, 16 and 17. And then in round 18 and 19, I got auto pick because I wanted to talk about Cedric Wilson. And instead, Cedric Wilson was not on the board and I couldn't find him. And Jonnu Smith somehow ended up on that roster. And then to finish it off, Nick Westbrook-Ikine at 240th, Mr. Irrelevant. I picked him because the Tennessee Titans have Treylon Burks and Robert Woods and Westbrook-Ikine. So there you go. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. If you haven't subscribed to the Best Ball Fantasy Football Podcast, make sure you do wherever you listen to the podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you're giving the 5-star ratings. Appreciate that. And tomorrow, I will be on this live, I believe at 8:30. Let me pull up. Where did I write it down? I wrote it down somewhere. Okay, we're going to have David Gautieri come on and we'll talk about best ball rankings. So he and I are going to talk about best ball ranking. I'm going to pull mine up from Fantasy Pros and we're just going to discuss players. So if you are interested in finding out our takes, make sure you're listening to that. And then on Friday, for those who are into the Week 17 tournaments, like the Best Ball Mania 3, I'm going to have Sam Chowdhury of FTN Fantasy come on, and we're going to discuss some Week 17 matchups, which ones you should be targeting, avoiding, what players are most interesting, the anticipated weather conditions, the domes, the whole bit. So check that out. And in the meantime, good luck in the best ball streets.